So obviously you're going to run the ball. On the first run of that drive, they gave it to Corey Clement. Okay, maybe it's just a chance to change a pace, a little breather. The second play, they hand the ball off to Boston Scott. Again, Sanders is not in the backfield. So both plays end up getting minimal yardage, and they're forced to then go to a third down play where it's basically a design fake run for Carson Wentz, who ends up taking, I think he only got 1 yard or took a loss on that play. So the Eagles have to punt. But in those three instances, when they wanted to run the ball, why was Sanders not out on the field? To me, I'm concerned and thinking there may be an injury at play, that we don't know something, that maybe, Sanders was sitting out because there's something tweaked, he's sore, what have you. But if he's not injured, he has to be on the field there. And if Doug Peterson is keeping him off for some weird strategic reason, or Deuce Staley is rotating his running backs in a way that makes it so that at that point in the game, you have Sanders on the sideline, that needs to be corrected immediately.
Welcome to the ChadBurn Show, brought to you by M. Chad Baldwin.
Welcome to the ChadBurn Show. I am your host, ChadBurn, and we are back on a beautiful Monday morning where we get to talk about the wonderful games of Week 4 in the NFL, as well as some of the other big games we should discuss, such as the NBA Finals. Miami versus the Lakers. Obviously, the first two games looked pretty much all Lakers with LeBron James dominating the paint, but the Heat have come back in a big game where Butler had a 40-point triple-double to now make it a 2-1 Lakers lead in the series. The Lightning have won the Stanley Cup Finals. Football is getting COVID tests. There's lots of news there. I mean, there's just so much going on in the sports world. It is amazing, and I'm happy to be back on to be able to discuss all the little bits of the sports universe right now. As we mentioned, the Heat-Lakers series has been incredible. I'm continuing to cheer for the Heat. I hope that they can get it done. I'm a huge LeBron fan, but the scrappiness, the ability for that team or the Heat to come together and win is really something that is driving me. I think the storyline is great, so I continue to root them on. But again, an amazing series. And NFL Week 4, I mean, there were so many points scored. It was incredible. If you had the red zone on, the NFL red zone on at the 1 o'clock hour yesterday for NFL Week 4, it was just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown in the first half. I couldn't believe it. The scoring just was not stopping from across lots of different teams, bad teams, good teams. Everywhere it was competitive. There was competition. It was just incredible to see. So what I want to do to start this off, before we get to talking about the Sunday night game, which was between my Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers, I thought we'd look at big, at least 4 top stories in the NFL and kind of discuss the scores and really what unfolded from there. Again, these podcasts as we go forward are going to be a little more NFL-centric as we have kind of the big news in the NFL. But we're also going to look forward to, once the NBA Finals continue to heat up, we will discuss the next game between Butler and LeBron. But I'm just not prepared to talk about it because I've been so football-focused and so football-wired in that we're just going to keep hitting it on that for now. But, bear with us. There will be more content like that coming forward. So do not worry. But really, the 4 games I want to talk about this week are really some interesting storylines across the NFL, high-scoring games that came close to the end and really impacted, I thought, across the entire league. Game 1, Cowboys taking on the Cleveland Browns. It was an incredible game if you like high-scoring, intense offense, but you do not like defense. That's right. The Browns end up walking away from this game a 49-38 lead with really just yards on yards in offensive production. It was insane. The Cowboys end up losing this one, even though Dak went 41 for 58 with 502 passing yards, 4 touchdowns thrown, and only 1 interception. Baker Mayfield didn't even come close to that stat line, yet the game was still up with a 49-38 win. Baker with 19 out of 30 completions, 165 yards, and 2 touchdowns thrown. Incredibly, the Browns had 508 total yards with 307 rushing yards. Basically, the Cowboys' defense sucks. And that's why right now the Eagles are first in their division, because the Cowboys have lost 3 games because their defense can't keep the score below 30 points. I mean, they gave up 49. The Cowboys were down at one point 27 points in the second half going into the fourth quarter. And miraculously, the Cowboys came back and almost won this game. But again, it came down to the fact that they're just such a deep hole dug for you. It's impossible to get out of it. It's impossible to overcome that. because you have to be near perfect on both the defensive and offensive side of the ball to come back from a 27-point deficit. And their defense wasn't. Late in the game, they allow OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. to sweep around on what was basically a reverse jet sweep and get a 50-yard run for a touchdown, an incredible run where OBJ showed off both his speed and his ability to lose defenders in the field. Absolutely incredible. Breaks that one big. Gives the Browns really kind of the death knell touchdown they needed to lock away that game. Put the final nail into the casket. That is the Cowboys' season, it seems. But they are now 1-3. They are behind the Eagles in the division. The Browns continue to do well. They're 3-1, something I didn't think we'd see for the Browns for a while, but they continue to impress, getting the production. Cowboys are desperate to find an identity on defense. The secondary cannot get there. They have a front line that seems to be well, but not able to get through. But really, it is just intense watching that unfold. The next game we want to cover is obviously the Chargers versus Tampa Bay, where we had Tom Brady taking on Justin Herbert, the largest quarterback age difference we've seen in an NFL game of 22 years between the old GOAT, that is Tom Brady, and then the new young gun, which is Justin Herbert. Herbert had himself a great game again, looking excellent as a rookie for the Chargers. 20-25 with 290 yards and 3 touchdowns with a late INT that sealed the game for Tampa Bay. But Tom Brady as well would not be denied in this game. 30-46 with 369 yards and 5 touchdowns. The first time Tom Brady has thrown 5 touchdowns since 2017. He did have one interception that was returned for a touchdown by the Chargers early on in the game. But Tom Brady would come back from a 17-point deficit in the second quarter to win that game, 38-31, the final score. Really impressive for, I think, Tom Brady, who started clicking in the second half, getting the ball to Scotty Miller, getting the ball to Evans when he needed to. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers would lose O.J. Howard, it appears, to an injury for a while, but it's unfortunate to see for Tampa Bay, who's starting to actually click on the offensive side of the ball. But really, what I think, even though it's a loss, the Chargers need to be happy because they are seeing that they have a quarterback that they can rely on and move into the future with. Justin Herbert can sling the ball with having some incredible deep passes down to get that game close. I think the Chargers be happy. Granted, you're losing, but at the same time, you need to look towards the future. And right now, because you're in a bit of a rebuild mode, you know you have a quarterback now you can rely on. You're going to have him on a rookie contract for a bit. Start building those pieces around you. You have Keenan Allen. Get more wide receiver help. You have Mike Williams. Make sure Austin Eckler's not going to be healthy. Try and get a long-term running back and you have, and then build up that defense around Nick Bosa and Melvin Ingram. The Chargers look great. Next game, Vikings versus Texans. The Vikings were 0-3 as well as the Texans, so it was a battle to see who would get their first win of the season. The Cousins end up throwing Kirk Cousins 16 of 22 for 260 yards and 1 touchdown. Watson was able to match that and do better with 20 of 33 with 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. It ended up coming down to the last play of the game, but unfortunately, Will Fuller could not control the ball. At the end of the game, it was a last-second play. Watson rolls left, throws a lob up to Fuller in the corner of the end zone, who comes down with the ball. Looks like he's made the catch, but on further review, it was obvious that, unfortunately, the ball moved when he went through the ground, so he was not able to complete the catch and get the touchdown. So that game would end with a 31-23 Vikings taking that one. Really incredible game. I mean, Kirk Cousins coming through, Dalvin Cook with a great rush yards. It really, Texans, I mean, they need to start finding their identity. Unfortunately, that defense is not coming through for them. Deshaun Watson is playing great, but he's not having the same weapons he normally is used to without DeAndre Hopkins being there. So he's having to rely on new players as well as some of the backup players and stars like Will Fuller, who can be a star with his speed, but it's still not the same. They're trying to get it done, but unfortunately, they came up short once again. 0-4, that does not bode well for the Texans and their hopes to make it to the playoffs. I will say the Vikings at least have had some pretty close games. Last week, they probably could have won one against the Titans, but they are now 1-3, with many could have been 2-2, but still 1-3. Let's see if they can start taking this momentum and starting to win more games. But that one was another exciting at the end finish. Again, guys, the 3 I've listed so far, of the 4, I mean, they went down to the wire and high scoring. All of them had those points, over 30 points. It's insane that this is what we saw in the NFL, but these are just the top 3 I picked, and we're going to get my 4th game, but these are top 3, and there were still more games that were close matches that were insane that you didn't expect to be as competitive as they were. The next game I wanted to highlight is Bills versus the Raiders, where we had Josh Allen again going yard with 24 of 34 completions, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then on the other side of the ball, Derek Carr with 32 of 44, 311 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Bills would win this one. The Raiders had so many opportunities to get back into this game, but unfortunately, turnover after turnover is what hurt them. You first had, obviously, the fumble by Waller. Then you had the fumble by Carr. It just seemed that they could not get their act together. They would end up scoring a touchdown late to bring it close, to bring it within a touchdown, really, to win that game. But unfortunately, they just could not get it done. Aguilar did have himself another classic game. If you're an Eagles fan, you remember Aguilar obviously blowing certain situations, especially his poor year of 2016, where Aguilar against the Seahawks caused an illegal formation that brought back a touchdown by Zach Ertz. And again, while playing against playing for his new team, the Raiders, against a team like the Buffalo Bills, he once again caught the long pass that could have been touchdown, but it was called back because of his stupidity on the offensive formation again. He was covering the tight end, which is a no-no when he's up on the line. So the play was called back with some penalty yards. So Aguilar lost a touchdown that could have helped them at least be closer in this game. Since the Raiders end up losing by 7, that one could have been big for him. It ended up costing him. But Aguilar had himself some good plays. He did catch the touchdown that would bring it within bring it within 7 points to tie that game up. But unfortunately, boneheaded mistakes. But that game was great, again, just because both quarterbacks were able to get the ball down the field. You were able to see really exciting offensive plays, explosive offensive plays. But the Raiders are still struggling, I would say, to really play 4 quarters of football. I mean, they're 2-2 right now. They've had some really close games. They've won a great one, obviously, against the Saints. But in this one, I think they could have had it. It's just mental mistakes at the end of the game. The turnovers late are brutal and are never going to help you succeed in this league. So we need to see the Raiders start being able to protect the ball, be able to make smart decisions. Their defense is at least coming along. I mean, you're going to give up yards to Josh Allen. The man that we've seen this year can throw the ball. He can sling it. We know that he has the mentality to go deep. He holds on to the ball long so he can get those opportunities down the field. So yards were going to happen from Josh Allen. The real question was, can you stop everything else around him, and can you score enough to keep up? Fortunately, that's not the case. So the Bills end up winning that one 30-23 in a thriller of a game. So those are my top 4 NFL storylines I wanted to cover. Obviously, the 49-38 Cowboys lost, the 31-38 final for the Chargers Tampa Bay, 31-23 Vikings versus Texans, and 30-23 Bills versus Raiders. But as I mentioned, there were so many games that were exciting to look at during that whole week 4. I mean, the Seahawks ended up coming with a big game over the Miami Dolphins, where Fitzpatrick actually was able to will that team forward. I thought that the Seahawks were going to easily handle that one. Redskins get destroyed by the Baltimore Ravens, but if you like watching offense, it was fun to see the Ravens have their way against the Washington football team's defense. And also the Jaguars for Cincinnati was another great game, close to the end. Gardner Minshew and then trying to pull it off, but the Cincinnati behind Joe Mixon, if you had him on your fantasy team, you were loving it. Joe Mixon going off against the Jaguars. So really, if you were able to sit down and watch any of the NFL during week 4, I think you had yourself a good game. There were no bad games this week. Really exciting all around. What I thought was going to be a bad game was really actually towards the end of the day and towards the evening, the primetime Sunday night football game slot at 8:20 p.m. on NBC, Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers. Even with their backup quarterback in for the 49ers and missing key players on their defense and on their skilled players on offense, I thought the 49ers were going to easily handle the Philadelphia Eagles in this one. They were able to destroy the Giants, and right now I see the Eagles on par with the New York Giants. They don't seem to really have the pieces they need. They are riddled with injuries. It just did not seem to be the right equation for the first win of the season for the Birds. But what do you know? The Eagles come out and make it competitive against that Nick Mullins 49ers offense. Now, to be clear, Wentz did not have a crazy stat line. Wentz was only 18 of 28 with 193 yards, didn't even eclipse 200 yards throwing, 1 TD and an interception. Again, a tip-up one that should he have made the pass? Probably not. It was not the right situation. He was kind of forcing it. The pocket was closing. But he made the decision, and unfortunately was picked off. It ended up not costing them the game. Wentz also was productive on his feet, something we're seeing more and more in these games with the whole offensive line injured, with the rookie wide receivers, really with no talent around. He's starting to push himself out of the pocket and really trying to run the ball. So we have to be kind of excited to see that. We haven't seen that since 2017. Wentz would end up scoring the first touchdown of the game. He also ran for another 37 yards to really take the lead on that. They ended up going for a 2-point conversion early in the game. Doug Pearson showing that he actually is aggressive. So after taking all the criticism from the Cincinnati game of not being aggressive enough when it mattered, he decided to start off right on the first score to make it an 8-0 lead. So make it tougher for the 49ers to come back. 49ers would eventually take a lead. Mullins was playing well with both touchdowns to Brandon Ayuk, which, again, the Eagles defense needs to stop plays like this. Ayuk basically took a screen on the right, was able to run all the way down and hurdle a defender into the end zone. Kittle went completely off. Nothing could stop Kittle. Kittle was clips over 130 yards in receiving and a touchdown in that first half as well, which made it a 14-8 game against the Eagles. I mean, the defense is what it is, right? We have one cornerback that we can rely on, and that is Darius Slay. Mills was actually moved from safety to cornerback because his play just hasn't been good. They're great in safety, and they're so weak in the cornerback position, they had to bring Mills back. So you had Epps back in safety, you had Mills back up in quarterback position. You've lost Avonte Maddox. You only have really Darius Slay that can play man coverage. It was not looking great for what would be the pass defense of the Eagles. However, the defense came through, and they were playing against not a great quarterback, so you needed them to take advantage and get turnovers early in the game, and they kind of did. After a big catch by Kittle that brought the 49ers to the 20-yard line, 20 out from the end zone, the Eagles defense came away with a big pick. Rodney McLeod, obviously, starring for that one. It was huge. That allowed the Eagles to go down and get a field goal and make it closer before the end of the half. But again, it was just one of those things where the defense has not gotten any turnovers so far, and they were able to do it early. The defense also was able to recover a fumble from LeBlanc. LeBlanc picked up a fumble off of Millens. There was also the interception by Alex Singleton that went back for a touchdown to give the Eagles a 25-14 lead. The defense, I would say, was pretty weak at the end of the game, but they were able to get the turnovers, 3 big turnovers that was allowed them to really, solidify the lead and able to continue to give Wentz short field position to score touchdowns. So, I mean, again, this is what we've been asking for. We weren't able to get that turnover differential right now because Wentz was giving up too much. The defense wasn't getting anything. Defenses continue to get sacks every game, but they're still not able to get the big turnovers, and here they are coming big when we needed them. Again, I will point out, though, there were 2 quarterbacks that played for the 49ers. Mullins played all the way through until the fourth quarter, going off for 18 completions for 200 yards. C.J. Beathard ended up coming in to replace Mullins in the fourth quarter after Mullins had thrown that pick for a TD that gave the Eagles a 2-score lead. Beathard, in 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, went for 14 of 19 for 138 yards. He had 138 yards passing in 6 minutes for the fourth quarter. And again, it's a lot to do with the fact that Schwartz was going with the prevent defense. He was able to do some soft zone, really making sure nothing beat them over the top. And Beathard, read that, and I think Kyle Shanahan also made sure to get that in his ear. It was like, take the checkdowns. Let's get 10 yards at a time, right in the middle, underneath the zone. Don't worry about going over top. Don't worry about trying to get outside. We have timeouts. We can make this work. And they did. They got down to the end zone, and they were able to score with 2 minutes and 2 seconds left, meaning that on the onside, where I think on that kickoff, that should have been a 2-minute warning, after that kickoff went and they tried to make the onside and the Eagles get the ball, it was 2 minutes and 2 seconds, giving the 49ers an extra timeout while the Eagles have to run a play. The fascinating part at that point was, and again, this is, it's 25-14, when Alex Singleton makes that touchdown. It's now gone up. It's 25 to 21. No, sorry, the score is 6, so they failed on the 2-point conversion. So it's 25 to 20. So right now the Eagles have only a 5-point lead, and for whatever reason, and Doug Pearson's going to have to answer for this in his press conference because it made no sense, and I'm surprised no one asked it last night, was why was Miles Sanders not on the field during that drive? Again, it is 2 minutes and 2 seconds. You're going to have to run the ball at least twice in order to make sure that the 49ers have to use their timeouts to make sure that the clock is always being forced to run. And so that when the 49ers do get the ball back, they're not going to have much time to get down the field and score a touchdown since they can't tie it with a field goal. So obviously you're going to run the ball. On the first run of that drive, they gave it to Corey Clement. Okay, maybe it's just a chance to change a pace, a little breather. The second play, they hand the ball to Boston Scott. Again, Sanders is not in the backfield. So both plays end up getting minimal yardage, and they're forced to then go to a third down play where it's basically a design fake run for Carson Wentz, who ends up taking, I think he only got 1 yard or took a loss on that play. So the Eagles have to punt. But in those 3 instances when they wanted to run the ball, why was Sanders not out on the field? To me, I'm concerned and thinking there may be an injury at play, that we don't know something, that maybe, Sanders was sitting out because there's something tweaked, he's sore, what have you. But if he's not injured, he has to be on the field there. And if Doug Peterson is keeping him off for some weird strategic reason, or Deuce Staley is rotating his running backs in a way that makes it so that at that point in the game, you have Sanders on the sideline, that needs to be corrected immediately. Because it is clear the talent gap between Sanders and Boston Scott Clement is immense. Miles Sanders is a top-tier running back and is going to develop into a great threat in this league for a long time if he stays healthy, knock on wood. But still, the fact is you can't be just putting in Boston Scott and Clement just willy-nilly in those scenarios. They're not going to get the yardage you want. On top of that, don't forget who was blocking up front for the Eagles, okay? The only starter from the offseason to be starting in this game on the offensive line was Lane Johnson, and he was out half the game because of a sore ankle. So you had, Jason Kelce. I always rely on the center. I don't think of that one, but honestly, so Jason Kelce was the other offseason starter that's in the game. So Jason Kelce is your only piece that you've been able to rely on this offensive line. Lane Johnson's coming in and out. So you have Driscoll, you have Pryor, you have Mailata, and then you have, who was the fourth one that's in there? I got to look it up because honestly, they've gone so deep in this offensive line to make a makeshift line that works. You barely know who's even starting out there. So no wonder Carson Wentz was under pressure the whole time. He got hit several times by the defense as well as giving up 2 sacks. It was really tough for him to get things going. Now, granted, he did get some passes, but why are you relying on your second and third string running back with an offensive line that's made up of basically guys that are taken off the streets in the 2-minute situation and not giving the ball to Miles Sanders? Makes zero sense. So I hope Doug Peterson come out and actually give us an answer for that, as well as a little insight into what happened. Was he injured? Did he need a breather? Was it just something of a game clock? But whatever it is, that plan needs to change going forward. We cannot risk late game situations without Miles Sanders on the field. And if it was a miscommunication, fine, but rectify that for the next game. I want to hit back on that since we talked about for the rush game. The O-line, the Eagles are one of the most injury-decimated teams in the league right now. I cannot believe that that they had none of the starters out there at one point. You have Mailata on the side, who actually didn't do too bad. But, I think it's fascinating to see that Carson Wentz plays his best, it appears, when he has all backups on the field. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Doug Peterson is continuing to kind of simplify the playbook as well as get more creative when he needs to rely on these backup mid-tier players. Don't forget, before the season started, Doug Peterson came forward saying that we were going to be a more creative offense, that it was going to be a creativity-driven offensive scheme style. We're going to have a lot of different fakes, a lot of motions, a lot of movement, dummy players coming in like Hurts in order to confuse the defense. We've seen none of that so far until this game, right? We saw a little bit here and there with Hurts coming in, but we didn't really see a lot of creativity, a lot of faking to the left but screening to the right, of bringing in a lot of different jet sweeps, of trying to, utilize your wide receivers in different packages. We weren't seeing that until this game. And I think a lot of it comes down to Doug Peterson knows that he can't rely on these players straight up for talent, so we need to kind of figure ways to get them in better position. That should be, I think, obviously a strategy put forward if you have your starters or not. But, if you don't, and this is what you're stuck with, kind of these backups, at least he's getting creative now. We're all saying, maybe Carson Wentz just plays better with the backups. Maybe he should do better with backups. I don't think that's the case. I think the play calling, for whatever reason, seems to get better when the backups are in. So maybe we just need to take the same philosophy that Doug Peterson is using right now with the backups and apply that to the starters, because I think Wentz could get some serious connections with them. Wentz needs to be addressed as well after some very rough weeks. Again, he didn't play perfect, but he started coming out and actually hitting some great passes Obviously, the Fulgham pass at the end to get the touchdown to take the lead for the Eagles was huge. A perfect pass by Wentz to him. I think Wentz also had some clutch plays with the 4th and 4, 4th down pass to Hightower, which I did not expect that. That was incredible to see that Doug Pearson drew that up and Wentz was able to hit it perfectly. There were a lot of slant routes he nailed. Some he didn't hit as well. Obviously, Sanders, I think he should be able to make that catch. It was a low pass. It was a kind of an HB angle kind of run where, Sanders coming out of the backfield, slanting in across the middle. Wentz needs to hit that because it was wide open. Needs to hit him in the chest and allow Sanders to run in open field and make a move. But again, it wasn't super low that he couldn't make the catch. It was difficult, yes, but you'd think that Sanders can do that. There were some other passes that were a little bit outside, high and low. Wentz needs to figure that out and fix it. I think he is a little rattled seeing that none of the starters are out there. He's trying to get the ball out quickly, and that is obviously leading to some mental errors and mistakes, but he still needs to clean that up. However, overall, that was a game we needed to see from Wentz. He took control of the game. He put the team on his back. He made sure that we were going to be an opportunity to win. I felt his ability to move around with his legs, to move the pocket, to really start taking advantage of that. You saw some beautiful passes when that happened. And again, you saw him try and make some big plays and also running for a touchdown. So Wentz is, I feel, starting to calm down. He's starting to get out of his head. He's starting to play football and starting to play instinctively a football player. So I think that is something positive we can go forward and take from this game and think Wentz can actually build on this and start getting better. Do I think the Eagles are a great team now? No, absolutely not. That was a beat-up 49ers team who's been hit as much by injuries as the Eagles have been. So I really think they should have won that game. Granted, Vegas had them as 7-point underdogs, so not a lot of people had faith going into it. But the Eagles are what they are, right? They are a middle-tier team that's going to struggle a lot and then have some success here and there. So I think we need to kind of go in with that expectation. But again, that doesn't mean we have to miss the playoffs. This is a very weak division. The Cowboys' defense is horrible, and they're going to need to score 60 points a game in order to win any games going forward, and their schedule gets tougher. The Eagles' schedule kind of stays about the same we're at right now, if not a little easier, and they are 1-2-1 right now. They may not need a winning record in order to get into the playoffs. That draw that I hated last week has actually helped us, and the Eagles are now first place in the NFC East. If we can beat the Cowboys when we meet up with them, if our defense can kind of slow them down and we can actually score like crazy on their defense, I think there's a chance. Really, it just comes down to us beating the Cowboys and us maintaining really the kind of momentum we have right now. So hopefully the coaching staff is looking at this game and seeing that this is something we can replicate going forward. Hopefully we're going to be healthier as the weeks come on and we're actually going to have some linemen that we can rely on and protect Carson Wentz. But, this is kind of the season we've been dealt with, and we need to continue forward and try and make the best of it. But I do believe the Eagles have a chance to make the playoffs just because this division is so horrendous. We'll see if the Cowboys can get their act together on defense. But, man, they are bad on defense. Their offense is great. Their defense is terrible. So let's hope the Eagles can kind of capitalize on that. I don't see why not. Why not? Maybe we can make the playoffs. Whatever. So moving on, obviously, from talking about the NFL storylines and the Eagles versus the 49ers game that, I was up late watching, and, luckily Eagles coming away with the win in first place in the NFC East division. Crazy. 1-2-1, first place in division. Insane. I think it's also important we address right now the COVID situation happening in the NFL. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans are in double digits positive cases. Their game from the Steelers has been moved. Cam Newton came out being positive for the Patriots, so that game was in jeopardy. And now you have the Chiefs versus Patriots playing tonight, a doubleheader Monday night football game. I think this is what we were to expect, right? We knew that there were going to be some outbreaks. We knew that if you're not going to do a bubble, if you're going to allow these players to travel, to stay home, to stay in their communities, that at one point there is going to be an outbreak on some of these teams. The question is, what is the threshold for which the NFL will deem no longer acceptable and have to cancel the season? Because there's no way you're going to have, if you ever have more than 5 games in a week that need to be rescheduled, the season's over. There's no way. You can only do these 1 games at a time because you can actually start finding out slots at work, and you can maybe push it back to take the place of a bye week and so on. There are things you can do right now. But as we continue to move forward, if more teams are getting exposed, if more teams get COVID, what's going to happen to the season? I think the NFL is trying really hard right now. I know it's killing me in fantasy because I have Derrick Henry and just have to accept that. But really, what's the threshold of this? How high can we go before this season's over? I'm pretty nervous that with kind of the big explosion we saw in Tennessee, that could easily happen in other cities and other teams. And we could see really, 3 to 4 teams having to sit out because their players are just completely, again, destroyed by COVID. Again, this is a very, very, I would say, catchable disease. It is extremely contagious. All players are very close to each other. They're working out. They're in a high kind of risk area. So we're hoping that they can somehow maintain it. But the NFL needs to have the meeting that they're going to be having today on Monday, talking to the owners, making sure that the coaches are following the rules, that we are not going to continue these outbreaks. Because, again, the season is not going to be able to survive if we are constantly having to push back games. There's going to be a point where it's no longer feasible to reschedule, and some teams are not going to play all 16 games. And if that's the case, how then do you determine the playoffs? How then do you determine the draft order? All of those things are implicated in this once it becomes out of control. So I'm hoping that the NFL commissioner is able to get these owners and these teams in line, and that they can have procedures in place that are going to work. But again, if we see a large uptick of obviously cases coming across and games having to be suspended, there's no shot we're going to have a season. I'm pretty nervous. I actually don't even think that the Chiefs-Patriots game is going to happen tonight, because I think more cases will come forward as positive. But again, we have to kind of cross our fingers and hope for the best. It's been really tough. I don't know what the NFL expected from this. We knew this was going to happen, but let's see how they can control the outbreak. I mean, that's all it comes down to, is really how well can they maintain this and actually control the inevitable, which is a large outbreak in the NFL. So I have hope. I think we need to talk about it more. Hopefully we can have some guests to kind of shed some more light on what is the risk here, what we've seen so far in the NFL and how much it has spread, what are the chances that this can continue to go forward and really affect more games. So those conversations to be had in the following weeks, but keep an eye on it. If you're a fantasy owner, make sure you have backups for a lot of your players. You're going to be able to switch people in and out for sure. Be nice to your commissioner. There's a lot to be discussed on what are the alternatives to do in a COVID world. So be nice, discuss it out, and vote. But I'm a little nervous right now. Eagles got to win, so I'm happy. But overall, it's a tough environment to think that the NFL is going to make it through all 16 games in 17 weeks in the season. But with that said, I think we'll close it off. Kind of end it on a warning, an ominous note. But again, positivity. Eagles won. A lot of great games happened. If you didn't catch your team play, make sure you rewatch it, because it was a Sunday to not be forgotten. It was incredible, the amount of points scored. The offensive production was great. So if you like that kind of football, if you like the high-flying, high-speed football scoring games, make sure to check out Week 4. Really incredible all around. We will discuss, obviously, NBA next week. I think we need to give a little more detail into the Heat-Lakers game. It's becoming competitive now. I think Jimmy Butler can will that team to win. I think the Heat have the formula to do it. If they can get Bam Adebayo back, I think that's a big piece of it. Dragic has been important, but Adebayo needs to be down low to kind of control and contain Anthony Davis, because if not, Davis will have his way and LeBron will be able to feed him the ball all game. So that's my hope there. But we'll discuss that more. We'll look at to the rest of the NFL the next week. We'll talk about where the Eagles are at and how they can maintain the lead in the NFC East, and any surprises we hear with injuries and so on as the week unfolds. But I want to thank you for listening in. It's been another episode of the ChadBurn Show. We're going to continue going at it. I want to thank you all for being there. We're coming up on episode 52, which is almost our year. Our 52 weeks over is a year of episodes from the ChadBurn Show. We're going to continue to do it with your guys' support, so thank you. Until next time, I hope you all have a good evening and good night. Thank you for listening to the ChadBurn Show. Remember to check out all new episodes every Monday at 7 p.m. on Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all major platforms where you listen to your podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me and want to send in your questions or requests for topics to discuss in the show, you can email chadburn.show@gmail.com. All episodes have video recorded, which is then posted to our YouTube channel, The ChadBurn Show. Be sure to subscribe to us where you get your podcast or on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our new content. You can also follow the show on Instagram at ChadBurn Show and on Facebook, The ChadBurn Show, to see clips from previously recorded episodes and information on all upcoming shows.